PM, you're watching our special presentation on Budget 2023 and I'm Tamanna Inamdar. What a day it has been. It was widely predicted that there would be some kind of relief for the Indian salaried middle class income taxpayer. And that has definitely been delivered in spades. We have a power-packed show lined up for you. We're going to explore every aspect of the budget with the best names possible and essentially break down why this budget actually matters. So let's start with the top takeaways. The biggest one, of course, is the sweetener given to the new tax regime. It's been reduced to 5 slabs, lesser slabs, and if you earn below 7 lakh rupees per year, you don't have to pay taxes at all if you take the deductions into place. So the biggest takeaway is the change in the new tax regime where you pay a lower tax but you give up your exemptions. Now, this was a project and an announcement which started in 2020. It didn't have much takers then. So the finance minister has come in and made this new tax regime more attractive. As an income taxpayer, what you need to do after this is figure out with your CA, with your personal finance advisor, which one works for you. If you are a new entrant to the labor force and are below 15 lakh rupees a year in your income, possibly the new tax regime is the way to go. So that's the biggest takeaway. Some benefits have also been given at the higher end. So, for example, looking at surcharges, etc., the highest tax slab rate in this country for personal tax has gone down from 42.5% to 39% now. I would say another very interesting announcement was the new savings scheme for women. We've been talking about how interest rates are going down right now, how you're not really getting a bang for your buck for savings. Well, a new savings scheme for women has been announced with a 7.5% return. It's just for 2 years. Only women are eligible for this. And this scheme was also announced in the budget. Another important takeaway, a huge push to capital expenditure. This is something which will please economists, but believe you me, it means that the government is going to spend more money, 33% more than it was last year, putting up about 2.5 lakh crore rupees in building infrastructure in this country. That means economic growth, possibly more jobs. Now, there are not only good points about the budget. It's done no harm. It's been very muted on fiscal deficit. So, you know, it's touched the 6.4% target. 5.9% is the target for next year. But there was no significant increase in expenditure on health or education, things which the Aam Aadmi and order definitely need. The good point, perhaps no major populist move ahead of the 2024 polls, which was being expected, and the fiscal consolidation path has been stuck to. So let's begin with our first expert speaker, Arvind Panagria, former VC of Niti Aayog and professor at Columbia University, is joining us on the show. Mr. Panagria, great to have you on the show, especially considering we spoke right before the budget and you spoke about making the new tax regime more palatable. That's exactly what's happened.
Indeed, Tamanna, really great to be with you again. You know, I wrote an article very recently, about 2 weeks ago, and practically everything I sort of asked there has been delivered. So, yes.
Was that a special note to the finance minister that we don't know about, Mr. Panagria? Or maybe she's taking your recommendations very seriously?
No, I think, you know, it is that she is brilliant as an economist. That by training also, she is an economist. So she probably thought along the same lines, and the Prime Minister also, that I was thinking. So good, happy coincidence. You know, I mean, in a nutshell, I think you have just listed everything that I would have said, but I'll summarize very quickly that the budget stays path on fiscal consolidation, bringing the fiscal deficit down from 6.4% to 5.9% of GDP. It delivers on the capital expenditures, raising them 3.3% of the GDP. You know, this is a phenomenal increase. If you look only 3 years ago, it was only 2%. And the third, of course, big one is the personal income tax revisions to the schedule that had been introduced originally in 2020-21. And lastly, I think I should also add, and this is something I'm still looking into because I've slept only 2 hours. It's 6:30 in the morning for me, and I went to bed around about 2:30 or so. But I should nevertheless mention, I think some good news seems to be there on custom duties as well. That's an area on which I've been writing for quite a while. And there seems to be some sort of rationalization, whether it results in substantial reductions in custom duties needs to be seen. But there was certainly that, that the 21 basic duty rates have been reduced to 13. And that some of the duty inversion that existed, at least in some sectors, has been fixed up. So good news. I think I'm very pleased.
All right. So Arvind Panagria is very pleased. All kinds of reactions are coming in right now. And please do stay with us, sir. I'm quickly going across to a press conference being held by former Finance Minister and Congress leader P. Chidambaram right now with his take on the budget. Listen in.
Real GDP ought to have grown in double digits. Yet the FM and the Economic Survey put the GDP growth at only 7% this year. Will the government explain? The claim of real GDP growth is on the face of lower capital expenditure. Please see the following numbers. In the current year, the BE and RE numbers, capital expenditure was budgeted at 7,50,246 crore. Revised estimate is lower at 7,28,274 crore. Grants for creation of capital assets was estimated at 3,17,643 crore. Revised is 3,25,588 crore. The effective capital expenditure was estimated at 10,67,889 crore, but revised downwards to 10,53,862 crore. Please note that both capital expenditure of the central government and the effective capital expenditure are lower than the budget estimates. So what drove growth in 22-23? We know that private investment is down, exports are down, and private consumption is stagnant. So how does the government explain the 7% growth in the current year? Besides, in 22-23, the growth rates in Q1 and Q2 have been estimated at 13.5% and 6.3% respectively. So we already have 9.9% growth in the first half of the year. If the whole year will only yield 7%, does that mean that Q3 and Q4 will record growth rates of only 4 to 4.5%? For the whole year, therefore, quarterly GDP growth rate is sliding. 13.5, down to 6.3, down to 4.2, and then eventually down to 4.0. There are other numbers which are disconcerting. The lesson to be drawn is that the government is not spending what was promised on key schemes. Now,
all right, that was P. Chidambaram talking about what he thought didn't add up in the budget math, and we'll get more details on what he's saying. Meanwhile, I'm going back to Mr. Panagria for his take on the budget. So I just want to spend another minute or so on the new tax regime, Mr. Panagria, because we spoke about how exemptions needed to go away. Is this going to be enough of a sweetener? We already know that the new tax regime wasn't a super hit in the last 2 years that it was announced. Is this going to be enough, especially considering that 15 lakh and above bracket still pays 30%? So if they do have any of those expenses which count for an exemption, what is the incentive for them to move to a new tax regime? And at 15 lakh rupees an annum in this day and age of inflation, is 30% fair? That question remains, doesn't it?
Okay, so this is something that I need to look at more closely, but it is certainly a step very much in the right direction, and there's substantial effort has been made. Now, there are many taxpayers who fall below that limit, that 15 lakh limit, and for them, this tax regime does become more attractive. At least some of the tables that I've seen in the newspaper after getting up in the morning today suggests that of the three regimes, meaning the regime with exemptions, the non-exemption regime as it existed in the past, and non-exemption regime that has now been put in place. So the comparisons of the three kind of show that for, in fact, much larger levels of income also, beyond 15 lakh rupees, the exemption-free new schedule leads to lower taxation. So I think now you will see many, many more takers. That at least is my first read on this, of the exemption-free regime. Now, is 30% fair? I think, on that front, if that is going to be the highest rate in the exemption-free regime, I think, if you compare the marginal tax rate otherwise with the exemptions, that is now about 39%. Big difference. And going any below, going further below 30%, I think requires a little more evidence, perhaps. Let us see, how it works in the next year or two, and revisit
there was a lot of guesstimation that this would be a politically inclined budget. There are no major SOPs, at least announced, for the agricultural sector. The only big headline, really, or the big category of people who would be pleased is the income taxpayer. Why do you think so? Do you think this is to keep a steady ship in the face of, possible global recession? And have we managed to do at least that with this budget?
Yeah, well, my read is a little different on this, that the Prime Minister is confident that his message to the people that we need to manage the economy in a sound way, and the fact that, the genuine schemes that he floats, which brings the benefits to the actual intended beneficiaries, are appreciated by the people. I think he has come to believe that, and I think in that sense, this budget really reflects a very strong level of confidence on the part of the government that it is on the right track, which I think it is, and that what the Prime Minister himself has been calling the reveries, etc. That's not schemes that are meant only to please groups, but don't really deliver any good outcomes overall, are not to be pursued. And I think he is, both the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister have stuck to that. So that is how I read the absence of lots of giveaways.
All right, so there was an absence of giveaways, but a good headline that came out of it nevertheless. No one's going to be unhappy about the, average taxpayer perhaps having an option to pay less tax and have more money in their pocket. Thank you so much, Arvind Panagraya, for joining us and for burning that midnight oil. I'm joined now by Vinita Singh, co-founder and CEO Sugar, Rituparna Chakravarti, co-founder and executive vice president, Team Lease, Madhavan Narayanan, senior journalist with us, and Shalap Saxena, MD and CEO of Spandana Spurti Financial Limited, also with us on the show. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for speaking with us today. Rituparna, let me begin with the question of jobs. And that's something which was raised in former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram's press conference as well. That's something the opposition has been asking. Why no mention of jobs? Why nothing done for jobs? What is your take on the whole issue of skilling and ensuring that they are well-paying, quality jobs available for our youth?
Thanks for having me on the show. I think from my perspective, this has been a Goldilocks budget. Nothing hot or cold. I think it's pleasantly warm. Now, a question on jobs. I think one must acknowledge and realize that jobs are not really an immaculate conception. I think a jobs is a function of getting some of the basics around education, skilling, infrastructure, the kind of investments or the kind of attractive options the governments are announcing to kind of create more jobs is essentially what we need to pick up. From that perspective, I did see that there are some bright signals. For example, the load of compliances, almost 39,000 compliances are being reduced. There are almost 3,400 less legal proceedings, which leads to any kind of jail for the owners and founders. The impetus that is being given under the PLI scheme, because that's something which has been successful in creating on-ground jobs. The mention of the various aspects of around skilling, of course, are noteworthy, which is essentially focusing on the promotion of youth power. The mention of the Skill Digital India digital platform, which essentially is looking at creating more formal skills, because finally, the jobs that we aspire for in India are formal, high quality jobs. And for that, I think establishing a formal skilling network is an absolute imperative. Also, the fact that the government is putting their weight behind apprenticeship, where they are trying to incentivize the youth to kind of opt for it, as also a channel and a mechanism to become much more capable and employable,
Right.
to be able to kind of take advantage
just a
of
quick
potential
counter question there, Rituparna. The skill development scheme has been a regular feature in every budget for the last 6 years. It's not new. Just the things that these people are supposed to be skilled on keeps increasing, the list. Now it's AI and IoT. So with the new technology, the skills also increase. Is anything really happening? I mean,
No, I think it's a very
I always
valid
ask frank,
concern.
blunt questions, so I'm going to do that. I'm glad Vinita is appreciating it. But I think our viewers deserve it. Every year I hear skill development fund will increase. Now they're going to give DBT also to the apprentices. That's great.
Yeah.
But
no, I think you are raising a very
where are
valid
these skills,
concern.
skilled
I
people?
think what essentially you're raising a very valid concern. And one of the things that and it's not completely misplaced, your concern. Yes, there has been a lot of talk around skilling, but I think somewhere one of the missing link is that we need to make skilling integrated with on-the-job learning. And that was probably a missing link, which I feel that the government has picked up the cue that skilling in isolation of our education framework, skilling in isolation from what the industry requires is not really the way to go. And that's why I do feel that trying to marry it in with the apprenticeship regime is the way to go. Honestly, what we are trying to do in the last few budgets around skilling and the emphasis of skilling is undo the stuff that we did not do adequately in the area of skills or building connectivity and portability between skilling and education over the since independence, and maybe earlier than that. So I think it's not something which is going to overnight fructify into on-the-ground results, but we need to be persistent and we need to keep investing in it for us to see on-ground change, Tamanna.
All right. You know, I wonder how many companies are picking up people who have gone through these skill development centers and how that's helping. I think the announcement about nurses is very important because that's feedback that I've been picking up. There is a genuine shortage of nurses world over. A lot of countries are eyeing our nurses. We need to produce more. So, you know, specific assessments might help. Madhavan, great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
It may not be a populist budget, but it's sounding like a popular one. Everyone loves a headline where, you know, you have to pay less taxes at the end of it.
Well, I've come up with a new word today, new phrase. I call it constructive populism because...
Is this the opposite of Revdi?
Revdi, you see, I've been arguing that, you know, for me, populism is not a negative word. It is just a word used by the elite when spending is done in favor of the poor, especially on the eve of elections. I take a stand on this saying that you tell me what is populist and I'll tell you what is not populist. So if micro welfare schemes, whether it is building toilets or basic needs in tribal areas, all that is populist, then I would not I would be happy to be a populist. Only if it comes to giving Mangal Sutra in gold, as Jayalalitha used to during her heyday, I would call it populist. So there's a lot of asset creation, skill creation going on, and to that extent, it is a populist in a constructive way. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Tamanna, that the middle class always is not really given, too much priority the way many of us would feel. But you can't expect the prime minister who talks about maximum governance and minimum government to hand over offer letters in the budget. So what we are seeing is a big push on infrastructure, uh, green growth, which is a big theme, and there is 5G and digital India. All this is expected to create more jobs, whether it's of accountants, whether it is of technicians or technologists at various levels of what I would call a skill pyramid. If you're an MBA from Wharton, you might be on top of the skill pyramid. And if you're a local electrician in a village, you might just get to fix a wire or a switch in a tribal home, and that'll get you a job.
Right.
But if you're looking at secure jobs, I mean, even Google doesn't offer one anymore, as we just learned. So to that extent, it's not raining jobs. I would be worrying more about the fact that this government is what I call an artisanal budget that has too much of micromanagement written all over it. No, it's not a policy document. It is action manual. So you need a lot of action at the lower end of the bureaucracy and the branch level of rural banks. God forbid, how can you monitor and supervise all this in a 1-year time frame? Yeah, if it works as a long-term vision document, but you're going to
Right.
elections in 1 year from now.
No,
So
but
it's actually
Madhavan,
trying
let's
to
be honest. When has that stopped this government? Every pre-election year, the time frame is at least 3 to 5 years.
Exactly.
The budget
So
is given with the confidence that we're coming back to implement all of this.
also, let me say middle class wise that this spending plan of the government, whether it's capital expenditure or social spending, is coming in the backdrop of the RBI worrying about interest rates and interest rate hikes. So how are you going to manage EMIs? There might be a genie out of the bottle if the spending is not staggered properly. It's damned if you are and damned if you do situation. If the informal sector is not addressed through social spending, there is both a social and an electoral problem. And on the other hand, if the capital expenditure is too much too soon, we are looking at an overhang of inflation compounded by a ballast of more spending, where the interest rates will eat away on your EMIs, what it gives you as a positive on the income tax account. So
Okay.
I'm not trying to be pessimistic, Tamanna. I'm not trying to
But
be
what
cynical.
is your
I'm
new
just trying
term,
to-
Madhavan? What is the new term you have coined?
Constructive populism.
Constructive.
You know,
Can I
it is-
add a twist to it?
Yeah,
There's
please.
Revdi and there's diet Revdi. Diet
Oh,
Revdi is which is
that's
sweet,
a
but
good
it's good
one.
for you.
Tamanna, we should be writing speeches for the ruling party now.
At least we can survive from Chat GPT for some time.
Yeah.
We can come up with this. Now, Vinita Singh, so no Revdi or diet Revdi for startup sector. They've extended some schemes.
It is low sugar. It's low sugar.
I have my own
I might
sugar.
tell
Sugar-free
Vinita.
Don't need to
Revdi.
worry about
There is. You wanted
might tell-
I
ESOPs.
bring my
You
own
wanted
sugar.
ESOP. ESOP subs. That hasn't come. But do you think there's enough to make you smile?
I'm happy about the spur in demand that will hopefully come. I think, middle class was the most hit during the pandemic. And we've seen, like, while in malls, the consumption is at an all-time high, general trade had been impacted because that's where the middle class shops. So I'm hoping that this income tax rebate for up to 7 lakhs is going to spur some demand. And of course, the little sweetener for HNIs, where the max tax rate, which just sounded so incorrect, on paper, 42.7, that has come down. So I'm happy that overall there is, optics-wise, everybody's calling this budget a demand generation budget, and that always eventually leads to propulsion for startups. But I am disappointed about the fact that there was no addressing around ESOPs or around the capital gain tax of unlisted shares coming to par with listed shares. So those are my two big disappointments. But I hope it will come up in the next 2-3 years, if assuming the government stays, of course.
Okay. Boost to consumption, but Vinita Singh, more
Yes,
people
I
will
think
have a little extra money to buy your cosmetics.
absolutely. And like I said, like the middle class was the hardest hit. You know, if you have like a 7 lakh income, you're right there where you're, you know, shopping cosmetics in general trade. To get that zero tax, you had to put 2 lakhs in savings under the exemptions. But now you can get it like as is in the new tax scheme. And I think that's a huge win for especially first jobbers and, you know, younger folks in the 20s who are just beginning to start off. I mean, IT jobs, even for engineers, are in the 7 lakh range. So I don't think the 7 lakh is a very low income slab as far as India is concerned. I think it covers most of the middle class.
I think for the Indian middle class, just the thought that someone's thinking about them goes a long way. At the end of the day, in terms of your savings, it might not be a massive game changer for most people, but there is a sense that, okay, at least we are on the map. We are being thought of. So
absolutely. And Tamanna, yesterday we were talking about how you know, it's something that for years is being spoken about, but it's not happening. So, well, it happened this year, thanks to, you know, of course, 2024 being the election year. So I'm grateful for that. And the other thing that comes with getting a sweet mention, I think while there was nothing much for startups, the fact that the FM mentioned that we're the third largest startup country in the world, and that this ease of doing business is an important initiative. She did talk about 39,000 compliances reduced and decriminalizing about 3,400 provisions. I feel that, you know, at least they're giving it, I mean, they've not put their money where their mouth is, but at least they're talking about it. And, you know, that's a good starting point.
All right. You know, one big decision which came out in the budget fine print and has not got too much attention in our conversations is tax exemptions being removed for insurance schemes where your premium is above 5 lakh rupees. Shalabh Saxena, do you think that this will have an impact in terms of financial savings? What were your biggest takeaways?
So, good evening, Tamanna, and good evening to all of you. Specific to the greater than 5 lakh premium, while I represent the microfinance industry, but happy to answer the generic question, we'll have to see the impact on the number of people, you know, and how many actually get a straight benefit out of it and how many actually take it from an insurance point of view, insurance point of view. But so, you know, having said that, you know, let me just join this entire, and it's a pretty interesting conversation, Tamanna. This entire debate about employment and jobs, you know, I think, and in my considered opinion, a job is an outcome of an economic activity, you know. So if your economics is taken care of, if your business, your industries, etc. are taken care of, the jobs will happen. So that's point number one. And that's where, if I loop in back to the huge investment in the infra side, as I said, you know, I represent the microfinance industry. It is a 3 lakh crore industry contributing about 2.2% to the GDP, generating about 1.2 crore jobs. You know, so that's the scale that we are talking about. More so, all of this is predominantly rural. So I wouldn't hesitate to say and stick my neck out and say that this budget is actually trying to bridge the gap between the Bharat and India. You know, the large infrastructure in place, the distances are reducing, hence our customers who are bottom of the pyramid in the villages, you know, accessing markets which are 40, 50, 60 kilometers away, which probably a few years back wouldn't have been possible, and they would have to rely on the domestic market. It's here that, you know, these the income levels go up, we are able to deploy more funds, and they are able to generate more activity. So in that context, I think it is, and our country, it's a big country, you know, it takes time for things to sort of to see action really translating on the ground. It's a start. It's not that, you know, they've started it this year, but then I think it is a step in the right direction, and any investment in infrastructure will always be welcome. The middle class taxpayer, obviously, yes, you know, it brings a smile on all the people who are here and all the people who would be watching this for sure.
No, 1 minute. Shalabh Saxena, no one is middle class on this panel. Is, you know, I mean, except me, but nobody was waiting for that little revdi, sugar-free revdi. I want to ask you though, Mr. Saxena, on rural consumption and what was done for rural India. So usually the question is, why so many SOPs for rural India? Is it pre-budget, pre-election, etc.? This time the criticism that has come in from opposition parties, for example, is that you've done nothing for farmers. You've done nothing for farm incomes. And even though agriculture by itself is doing well, non-farm rural income has been hit. Are you seeing those signs of non-farm rural income looking a little delicate at this point? And would you wish for more to boost spends there?
So Tamanna, look, and you will never be at a stage, or you'll never reach a stage where you'll say that enough, now we are very happy. So obviously anything that translates more in terms of more money going to the rural India, etc., everybody will say, yes, keep it going. However, I have a larger point to make. It goes back to the point that I made, that if you invest in industries, infrastructure, etc., that's a robust model for the future, instead of these direct benefits being transferred into accounts, etc. While yes, it has to be calibrated, the benefits have to be calibrated, and you have to ensure that, there's a transition from a model A to a model B. However, those incremental steps will have to be taken consistently every year on year, so that you somewhere differentiate between the politics and the economics of it, because if you start confusing and mixing up the two, and there are enough examples around our country, our neighbors, etc., where, all of that hasn't worked. So to that extent, it's a brave decision to not really walk that path, invest where it matters the most, and this is a more long-term one. To your specific question in terms of have we seen it, we are associated very, very closely with the Bharat of India. Over the years, we've seen a lot of money flowing in, and when I say money flowing in, not in terms of the direct benefit, etc., it is more in terms of income opportunities there, and it is not about jobs. It is about doing, the self-employment opportunities which are there, grocery stores, animal husbandry, cattle farming, and all of that. That kind of is a long-term measure in my case, without even getting into the migration aspect, etc. So you try to develop the Bharat, and then you'll have a wholesome developed country. That's my considered view.
All right. So largely, I think positive developments on the budget. It's, if I borrow it from Rituparna, it's a Goldilocks budget. The porridge is just right. So whether it's porridge you like, or if it's Revdi or diet Revdi, all of that is, available for you. I'm going to take a very short break, but a lot more coming up on the other side. I also want to play out for you some of the highlights of what the finance minister said in her speech. Here are those top sound bites coming in.
Our vision for the Amritkal includes technology-driven and knowledge-based economy with strong public finances and a robust financial sector. To achieve this, Jan Bhagidari through Sabka Saath, Sabka Prayas is essential. The world has recognized the Indian economy as a bright star. Our current year's economic growth is estimated to be at 7%. It is notable that this is the highest among all the major economies. I propose to change the tax structure in this regime by reducing the number of slabs to 5 and increasing the tax exemption limit to 3 lakhs. The new tax rates are 0 to 3 lakh, nil. 3 to 6 lakhs, 5%. 6 to 9 lakhs, 10%. 9 to 12 lakh, 15%. 12 to 15 lakhs, 20%. And above 15 lakhs, 30%. This will provide major relief to all taxpayers in the new regime. Those with income up to 5 lakh do not pay any tax, do not pay any income tax in both old and new regimes. I propose to increase the rebate limit to 7 lakhs in the...
All right, we'll take a very short break at this point, but when we come back, I'm